All of us know what it's like to have a challenging day at work, but when you're a Hollywood actor, a tough day at work might mean throwing yourself off a 6-story building or wading through steaming, waist-high sewage. Acting may seem like a cushy job, but making a movie is far from easy. Sci-fi and superhero movies sometimes put actors through the ringer, and some stars have come dangerously close to just walking off into the sunset. Behind some of your favorite movies stand a lot of disgruntled workers who required some pretty tense negotiations to get them to stay. Here are 10 scenes that almost made famous actors quit. Ant-Man. Sometimes it's the lack of a scene that makes actors want to quit. Evangeline Lilly was on the fence about starring in a big-budget superhero movie when she signed on for Marvel's Ant-Man. When director Edgar Wright left the project, it was almost the last straw. Wright was also a writer on the film, but he and Marvel split over creative differences. Evangeline Lilly was tempted to walk when most of her original scenes were cut or completely rewritten. But after a successful meeting with new director Peyton Reed, Lilly decided to give Ant-Man a second chance. And it didn't hurt that the new script ended up with a much more involved character arc for her role. The Hunger Games: Mockingjay Part 2. Some scenes are just horrible to shoot, no matter what franchise they're in. In a memorable scene from The Hunger Games: Mockingjay Part 2, Jennifer Lawrence and Josh Hutcherson's characters had to fight lizard monsters in a sewer. The actors spent 3 weeks in water, filming a dark, smoky, and all-around miserable scene. Shot in a humid tunnel, the practical effects included blasts of fire, and the waterlogged costumes added 20 pounds of extra weight. The space was so tight that some of the actors couldn't even stand up in the cramped set. Jennifer Lawrence reported that it was rough, and even director Francis Lawrence admitted that the experience was truly miserable. Lawrence said that at one point, morale hit rock bottom, but he managed to keep his cast afloat just long enough to get the shots he needed. The Walking Dead. There are a lot of harrowing scenes on The Walking Dead, but one actor came close to leaving the show over a scene that didn't even involve animated corpses. Actress Lauren Cohen, who plays Maggie on the AMC show, became deeply disturbed after reading a scene in which she gives the character Lori a makeshift C-section to save her baby. The amateur C-section causes Lori to bleed to death, and the other characters have to shoot her corpse to make sure she stays dead. It was all a little too much for Cohen, who told fellow actor Steve Yeun she couldn't shoot the scene, and she'd have to leave the show instead. After thinking things over though, Cohen decided that it wasn't worth losing her job over, and the result is one of The Walking Dead's most shocking death scenes. The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey. Even veteran actors sometimes feel like throwing in the towel. Sir Ian McKellen has starred as Gandalf in all of the Lord of the Rings films, but it was The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey that made him want to quit acting entirely. Unlike the previous Lord of the Rings trilogy, the Hobbit movies were shot with 3D in mind, so the usual tricks of forced perspective to make the hobbits look small just weren't going to cut it. For this film, McKellen was stuck in front of a green screen, essentially acting opposite thin air, while the hobbits and dwarves were filmed on a separate set. After shooting the first few scenes with invisible co-stars, McKellen was frustrated to the point of tears and wanted to quit the project. Director Peter Jackson had to step in with flowers and apologies to convince him to stay on for the rest of the trilogy. The Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. Fans may have a split opinion on Jessica Alba's performance as Sue Storm, aka the Invisible Woman, in the mid-2000s Fantastic Four movies, but I think that every comic book fan can agree that most actors need to be able to move their faces in order to act. Apparently though, director Tim Story thought differently. During one scene in the Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, the director wanted Alba to cry while keeping her face flat and expressionless. He repeatedly demanded that she cry prettier, and even suggested that the star keep her face blank so they could CGI tears in later. The ordeal made Jessica Alba consider quitting acting altogether. The Fast and the Furious. With the 8th Fast and Furious movie on the horizon, it's easy to forget the plot of the original, but it was a plot twist in The Fast and the Furious back in 2001 that nearly made Michelle Rodriguez quit the franchise before it even began. Rodriguez threatened to quit over a scene in which her character Letty betrays her boyfriend and sleeps with Paul Walker's character in a classic Hollywood love triangle. It was Rodriguez's first major film role, but the actress still put her foot down and refused to film the scene because of its lack of believability. Co-star Vin Diesel backed her up, and the movie was a huge hit even without the love triangle subplot. Robin Hood. Michelle Rodriguez isn't the only star to demand a script overhaul. Russell Crowe originally signed on for a film called Nottingham back in 2007, but Crowe was unhappy with scenes that painted Robin Hood as a villain and the Sheriff of Nottingham as the surprise hero. Crowe was so unhappy, in fact, that he threatened to leave the project unless it was completely rewritten with Robin Hood as a hero. He got his rewrite in the end to the point that the film was retitled Robin Hood. Unfortunately, despite rounds of rewrites and years of development, the film never became the box office smash everyone was hoping for. Interview with the Vampire. Long before vampires were sparkly, there was the 1994 film Interview with the Vampire, starring both Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise as sexy creatures of the night. Brad Pitt didn't care much for the gothic atmosphere though. He hated the vampire contact lenses and the questionable haircut, but most of all, he hated filming the outdoor night scenes in New Orleans for months on end. Or as he put it, 6 months in the effing dark. Sorry Brad, but vampires aren't really big on sunlight. At one point, he even tried to buy his way out of his contract, until he realized it would cost him about $40 million. Instead, he decided to save his dough and suffer through the night scenes. And that haircut. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Most actors would kill to get a regular gig in a wildly popular movie franchise, but when you're just a kid, you might not know exactly what you're signing up for. When Emma Watson was shooting the Hogwarts classroom scenes for Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, she came very close to ending her contract, which was up for renewal. The 16-year-old Watson felt trapped by the shooting schedule and hated having to dress like an old-fashioned schoolgirl. She ultimately decided to stick it out, but after months of shooting outdoor scenes for the Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows films in the cold, damp English countryside, she was relieved when the series finally ended. Star Wars: The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens smashed box office records as one of the year's highest grossing films, but there's quite a bit of pressure that comes with starring in a beloved franchise, as the 23-year-old actress Daisy Ridley, who plays Rey in the film, found out. Ridley is a newcomer to Hollywood, and she came close to bowing out of Star Wars entirely on the very first day of shooting. In her first scene of desert scavenging, director J.J. Abrams criticized her performance as wooden, a comment which nearly sent Ridley into a full-blown panic attack. She had trouble breathing and remembered thinking, "I can't do it," all while surrounded by the entire film crew. Luckily for all of us, Ridley got past her first day jitters and proved that she could very much handle a Star Wars film. So there you have it. Even Hollywood stars sometimes want to quit their day jobs. How would you deal with shooting for months in the pitch dark or stuffed in a cramped sewer? Let us know what you think in the comments, and remember to subscribe.